Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Lee Bannon album, Alternate Endings. Lee Bannon is a super versatile music producer known mostly for his hip-hop production, lending his beats to the likes of Pro Era, as well as Super Helpful. But the guy's been dropping lesser-known solo albums and EPs for years now. LPs like Big Toy Box and Fantastic Plastic and Caligula theme music. And a lot of these releases dabbling in instrumental hip-hop and some cloud rap and trap rap as well. And even though his releases have been getting darker and more atmospheric and chilled out and moody, I didn't really foresee the move that he was going to make with this record. Or really just the surprise transition he made away from hip-hop. I wouldn't really say he did a 180 with his music. He really did 3 backflips, a spin kick, and a front aerial off a 2-story building, landing somewhere in jungle, breakbeat, drum and bass territory. Genres of electronic music I remember being wildly popular when I was a lot younger, and I liked a lot of the bigger names coming out of them as well, like The Prodigy and the Chemical Brothers, and Crystal Method had some songs I liked, and then later I dove into artists who were much more aggressive and experimental with some of these breakbeat, drum and bass, drill and bass sounds, Square Pusher, Aphex Twin. And because there was a time when these genres had crested in the popular consciousness, it's hard not to see the direction that Lee Bannon takes on this record as nostalgic. And Alternate Endings makes me wonder whether or not this genre could sort of see a second coming, get popular once again, especially given that Lee Bannon has recreated these styles with such a deep attention to detail. The LP kicks off with the fantastic track RESORECTAH, very speedy breakbeats on this thing, glitchy vocal samples that are relentless, locked into the beat and constantly jumping up and down in pitch, sometimes chipmunked, sometimes RESORECTAH. Grimy bass lines on this track, great groove. This song to me has everything a great song in this style should have. But Bannon sort of distinguishes himself in this genre with an emphasis on atmosphere, executing some of these songs with a massive amount of reverb that might remind you of a Burial record. And I know there are atmospheric drum and bass producers like Goldie who definitely have influenced Bannon's music, but he does take the reverb, he does take the ethereal tones to an extreme degree sometimes. Especially on tracks like this opener where it seems like Lee is trying to either find or create as much common ground as possible between incredibly aggressive jungle and breakbeat music and ambient interludes. These sounds also come together really well on my favorite track here, NW/WB, which has all of these vocal samples from the RZA peppered throughout. The vocals are just screaming, they're attention-grabbing, really reminds me of The Prodigy. Then there's this incredibly infectious synth line, na, 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 na. And this lead is so strange, it's warped, it's twisted. The song delivers a blazing opener, but slowly grows more panoramic and ethereal as it continues on, incorporating these sounds in the background that sound like haunted winds, along with a lot of other indescribable noises and glitches and tones and little percussive flares that are spread throughout the track. Again, there's a really great balance of hard in-your-face sounds and more ethereal sounds as well on these first 2 tracks, but this atmosphere sometimes can be Bannon's undoing. Tracks like Prime/Decent and Shoot Out the Stars and Win. And songs like this really set the stage, but they fail to cast a leading role. The LP really is breakbeat wallpaper for a little while, unfortunately, and this doesn't really change until the track Phoebe Cats, where while this song is atmospherically addicted as well, the vocal samples and the overall melodies hanging in the atmosphere in the background are so pretty, they're so beautiful, they're so serene. And then there is 216, another favorite of mine on here, which starts off with a very, very eerie and murky piano part right at the beginning. There are these wailing vocal samples popping up repeatedly throughout the track, and I love the cascading keyboard phrases over the bridge. Tracks like this on this record are fantastic, ones that have a ton of detail, multiple phases, you really feel like you're traveling through different parts of the song from A to B. Even though there are tracks here that I think do sort of lack variety within the song itself, I do think Lee Bannon does bring a number of different vibes and feels on some of these songs, even though he does stick very passionately to that drum and bass, jungle, breakbeat vibe with some very subtle references to things like hip-hop and dubstep. The song Cold/Melt is kind of a detour for me, not really a highlight, but still stands out as being very psychedelic, and the closing track on here is similarly trippy as well. And then there's Value 10 as well, which has one of the more standout vocal samples. I love the funky bass line break toward the end of this track, the very steady ride cymbal. The changes of pace and sound are just enough for me. But even if you are into this sound, I do think to an extent Bannon does test patience, especially with the length of this record, and behemoths on here like the 9-minute song Ready/Available. One of my least favorite songs on here, not because of its length, but because of its really tedious lead melody that you don't get any relief from until about the 6-minute mark of the track, when the song changes pace and starts ascending up a somewhat epic chord progression. Overall, Alternate Endings is a decent album considering it's Lee Bannon's first big commercial release after being recently signed to NINJATUNE Records. It's got some undeniably fantastic tracks, but does it stay entertaining for the entire hour? Not for me. Plus, at this point, with pursuing this style of music, I think Lee Bannon is doing more emulating than he is carving a niche out for himself. While it's good and encouraging to hear that Lee Bannon can recreate this musical style to a T, it's going to be exciting to hear if he can push it beyond this. I'm feeling a decent to strong 6 on this record. Transition, but if you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Love it? Hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Lee Bannon, Alternate Endings, forever.